one of his examples. It's the architecture of the computer. You've got processing unit, you've got memory, and you've got this single connection between the two. And that's something that we live with today. We've got a bottleneck, essentially. If someone was sadly passed away earlier this year, but some of the work they were doing in the 70s, well, it was in 1968, he gave a presentation, Doug Engelbart, which was called The Mother of All Demos. Just to give you a sense of what that was actually like. Imagine that in 1968, you're sitting in your nice conference venue in Seattle, in San Francisco.
You see,
and suddenly you
most of the way through here, how this serves as a very powerful tool for an individual to work when he's studying, he's planning, designing, debugging, documenting. But we also saw, through the medium of leaving messages for each other, filtering them, that people can collaborate quite well over a period of time by working on joint files. In fact, you can have a joint file and go leave a message and get a response in a matter of minutes because they're all available instantly by anybody from one of these terminals. But there's another degree of collaboration which is very important and which we're just going to be setting up in the next few months, the hardware to do computer aid. But here we're going to set it up with a little bit of people aid too. So I'm going to establish a collaborative mode between me and another terminal. Bill Paxton's got a terminal back at SRI. So Bill, you come in through this intercom. Load up. I need to know what terminal you're on, Bill. 13. Okay. I'd like to have him see my text. And so this special thing, if I label 13, will switch over. So at his display, he sees my text. So I'll execute it. And sure enough, it does. But what's that running around? Well, he's looking at my text. He's not going to something to say
screen sharing.
So we can go
two messages on one screen. 1968. This was being presented.
But we carefully reserved for me the right to control and operate on this, so my bug is more powerful than yours. But we can have an argument. Yeah. That's what it'll look like. So, alright. So, in case you haven't been listening, Bill, we've been going through lots of examples, and setting up a collaboration here so that we can go on into information with people. And we set up now audio coupling, and we're both looking at the same display, and that'd be very handy to work. We can talk to each other and point, and maybe later I can hand you the demo on the spot board. I think you control it. But let's stay this mode now. And I have another feature that hardware.
So here you've got mouse, screen sharing,
I'd like to
shared
see what I'm
documents.
working on. So before I can do that, I have to set up my display in a certain way. Set it up so that I see it over like that. It leaves a corner up there, and I say, now computer, do the automatic switching and bring in the camera picture from the camera mounted on his console, such as the camera mounted on mine.
It's video conference.
That's great. Now,
all 1968.
Audio, see my work, you can point at it, I can see your
You can see more of the demos that Dustin and Steve did online. So that online system, there was a long list at first. So you had the mouse, screen sharing, hypermedia, linking between documents with links. All that was in that system. But if you think about it, we do have that now. You can actually get a shared pointer on the screen with one line of code in your browser with Mozilla's Together.js. We've got real-time editing in documents. We've had that for quite a number of years now with Etherpad, and Google is obviously trying to bring this all together with Google Hangouts, and there are other systems that do similar sort of things. So it was quite, I think we forget about some of the past that's gone on, and not just within programming, education as well. But how do we get to this point where it took 40 years for someone to start getting some of the ideas that Doug was talking about in terms of real-time collaboration into mainstream? And I just want to show you a clip from Brett Victor himself, where he's summarizing why he thinks we got to that point.
The real tragedy would be if people forgot that you could have new ideas about programming models in the first place. So let me explain what I mean by that. Here's what I think the worst case scenario would be, is if the next generation of programmers grows up never being exposed to these ideas. The next generation of programmers grows up only being shown one way of thinking about programming. So they kind of work on that way of programming, they flesh out all the details, they kind of solve that particular model of programming, they figured it all out. And then they teach that to the next generation. So that second generation then grows up thinking, oh, it's all been figured out. We know what programming is. We know what we're doing. They grow up with dogma. And once you grow up with dogma, it's really hard to break out of it. Do you know the reason why all these ideas and so many other ideas came about in this particular time period, the 60s or the 70s? Why did it all happen then? It's because technology, it was late enough that technology kind of got to the point where you could actually kind of do things with computers. But it was still early enough that nobody knew what programming was. Nobody knew what programming was supposed to be. And they knew they didn't know, so they just tried everything. Their minds were totally free, and they just said, maybe we could program like this, maybe we could program like that. They just tried anything they could think of. So the most dangerous thought that you can have as a creative person is to think that you know what you're doing. Because once you think you know what you're doing, you stop looking around for other ways of doing things.
For me, that resonated quite a lot in thinking about education, that we get stuck into certain ways of doing things. Some of that, is it's out of our control. Some of it is our control. So, I don't know if you can see it, dogma sucks. So thinking about how have we arrived within education at a point where we do have quite a bit of baggage. And there are various things that you can point to, accreditation, we need quality assurance procedures in place. Fortunately, we've got people like Joe at SQA are looking at different things like open badges that can try and break some of that. And the architecture in terms of, the physical structure of the buildings that we're operating in, but the architecture of courses and modules that seems to, put us along a particular trajectory. And also expectations. I remember a couple of years ago I was doing some work at the University of Strathclyde, and we were trying to changed the way lectures were run, so we were wanting to use voting systems instead of having a standard lecture each week. And the feedback from students was, we don't like this, our expectation is we want to come in each Monday morning and for you to stand at the front and talk to us for an hour. We don't want to have to do voting during classes. We don't want to have to go and look at resources outside class. We don't want that. That's not what we pay for. So those expectations are throughout the system as well. You know, just as well, us as educators have expectations. The idea of replicating dogmas of old ideas continue on. So, and there's a very nice, I'm sure you've seen it, the Ken Robinson Changing Education Paradigms I won't show you that one today, but if you haven't seen that one before, I just recommend it. So we go on to MOOCs. I'm pretty sure all of you have heard this term being banded around, massive open online courses. It's the fact that an educational development can start getting column inches and most major papers is quite interesting, I think. And I think it's like we should actually be trying to benefit from, try and get some publicity in a good way. Every letter is negotiable, so massive, the scale goes. I was originally supposed to do this presentation with Sheila McNeil, who's sunning herself in Australia right now. But Sheila became I don't know if she still is, the MOOC agony aunt.
I think she's weaned herself.
Yeah. So she had questions like, dear Sheila, how massive is massive? I've only got 100 students. So it does vary. You can go from, if you're teaching 40 students and suddenly you're teaching 100 students, that's quite a big jump up. I think that's massive. Open, again, this term seems to kind of, I don't know if it's been eroded over recently. Openness, varying degrees of openness. Sorry?
Open motion.
Sorry?
Open motion.
Open washing? I don't know that one.
Like white washing, but open motion.
Online, so technology. And courses. The courses one's quite interesting. Stephen Downs was presenting at Hawksey earlier in the year, and he said one of the worst things he did was to hang on this coursework. When he originally was thinking about MOOCs, it wasn't a module, a set two. He was thinking something more open than a prescription or something like that. But just looking at the landscape of all the kind of that sprung up around this interest in MOOCs, you've got kind of MOOCs as a service. You've got various people offering essentially a platform. So you've got FutureLearn, which is the UK OU-led initiative, and you've got edX, Udacity. These have all come up within the last year or so. Udacity is quite an interesting one because recently it's Sebastian Brun, who founded Udacity, was quoted as saying that he thinks he's got a lousy product. Which I think is a good thing. It's like airing some kind of bad laundry. These people come along, they've tried to use MOOCs or something, and I think it's time that we start reclaiming some of the ideas behind MOOCs for ourselves. But with these, the issue is that if you want to run a FutureLearn course, you have to be a FutureLearn partner. Anyone can take the course, but if you want to run it, your institution has to be a partner with them. And that's the same for Coursera as well. They picked the top 5% of institutions throughout the world. So if you want to run a Coursera course, you have to be a partner with them. But it doesn't stop obviously other people are going off and doing things. So one of the issues within MOOCs is providing some sort of platform to do it. And if your institution is using something like Blackboard, usually your license prevents you opening it up for everyone. Unlimited registration. But there are alternatives. Blackboard has course sites, which is anyone can go up, create a course on Blackboard for free. They have a directory of courses that are open for everyone to use. Another one is the infrastructure Canvas platform, which I think the University of Birmingham are the first one to use in the UK. But they have, again, the Canvas network, so anyone can create a course, create an outline, create some activities, create discussions, and run that course open to anyone abroad. There's some open source stuff going on in this area as well. So edX, who come out of MIT OpenCourseWare, they have the infrastructure behind what they're doing is open source, and Google are getting into the act as well with Course Builder. One of the issues I have with these systems are they're very complicated. If an educator was interested in running edX as part of within their institution, they'd be struggling through a lot of code. I think I couldn't do it. Similar with Course Builder, can't do it. The threshold is too high for me. But there are other ways. I just to provide a bit more context, I think it's worth just thinking about the age that we're living in. So, the price point in terms of some of this stuff is incredibly low, and then cases it's not there at all. So, this whole idea that we're dealing now with digital resources. So, an open textbook from the States, if it's digital, anyone can get access to it. There is no issue really with replication. This is, got a page from the Gutenberg Bible. I can show you that for free now. It's public domain. You can see it. You can browse the Bible. The guy next to him is Jonathan Worth. He is and still is a photographer. He does magazine shots and celebrity shoots. But he realized a number of years ago that his model, the photography model, was actually broken. The idea that you could take a picture and then keep selling that picture to people doesn't really work when it's digital. There's no cost for someone to replicate that image on a screen. There's a cost if they want to print it out. So Jonathan started releasing a lot of his photography, his photographs on Creative Commons. I'm going to come back to Jonathan in a second. We're also in the connected age. Sarah, how are we doing for time? Got about 10 minutes left? Yeah. So I won't show this video, but it's something that EDUCAUSE produced for their conference, and it's just to highlight the fact that we're in a connected age now. So there is this ability to communicate and connect with people across the globe through the internet, through social media. So we're not limited by physical space anymore. It is a lot easier to communicate with people far and wide. So that's kind of some of the kind of broader brushstrokes. So the challenge there with the MOOC platforms I was mentioning was the kind of the entry level was quite high. But at the core of it, I think it's just general. There's some very simple practices that you can do just to make your courses open. Just for example, putting your course program online so anyone can see it, I think opens up some interesting possibilities. Using technology like social media to allow people from around the world to connect and start participating in the course. I think it's quite an interesting proposition. And that was something that we did at Alt. We decided we'd run an open course, and openness was kind of throughout the whole project. We wanted to use Alt's community members to actually develop some of the content. So Gronya was one of the tutors one week, so we had 11 tutors, and we had different people coming in presenting their work through webinars. We did use Blackboard Collaborate, but we could have quite easily used Google Hangouts to do all that, so there would, again, would be no cost point for it. So, you know, there was a wide range of people inputting on this. Registrations, we had 900 registrations before launch. Considering that there are only 1,400 alt members, I think that's quite a good hit in terms of the registrations. I don't want to get caught up too much about how many people actually finished the course. Because I don't think that's particularly relevant. Which you're welcome to disagree with me at the end. I can tell you why. What we used for this was it was actually we used WordPress as a blogging platform, and one of the things we were keen to do was we didn't want to create a central place where people had to come. So we didn't want to create a walled garden. We wanted something that would allow people to operate within their own personal learning spaces. But at the same time, we realized that we had to pull some of this activity back in so that we could say to people, oh, you know, Johnny Wallace has done a blog post somewhere, you might want to read it. But this was all possible with using the WordPress platform and using the Feed WordPress plugin. We could pull in activity from lots of different streams. We could pull it into our central pot, and then people could come to the site and see this content, or they could get email alerts, or if they were tuned into RSS feeds, they could get that content as well. So it was kind of leveling the playing field. It was important for us to try and pull together some of this activity. At the same time, you know, registration wasn't actually required. Anyone could turn up to this course. The only reason registration was required is if they wanted to comment on something. But if they were commenting on other people's blogs, it wasn't an issue. And this is something that, this is Jonathan Work, again, in 2008. He just decided to open up his course. He does digital photography. He decided, right, the digital photography model I was using commercially wasn't working, so the education model wasn't working either. I want to do it differently. One of the key aspects of his course is that each week he records an audio interview, more often an audio interview with photographers within his field, and those recordings are available. So if anyone wants to go back and listen to the growing collection of interviews that Jonathan's done with some of the leading photographers in the world, you can. But each week he gets his class, he has about 40 students to sit down and they listen to that audio together and they share their thoughts through tweets. And I think that's one of the key things, is the phone hour hashtag. Because the students are sharing those thoughts with tweets, because it's a semi-synchronous event, everyone else in the world can have access to that audio recording. They can be providing their comments as well. So the students are getting an open education in terms of, the world is open to respond, to comment on the thoughts and reflections of the students. And it's not just commenting on audio recordings, it's, they're photography students, so they're sharing their work, on Flickr or wherever else that they want to do it. One of the reasons Jonathan used this model was he had no money, so he couldn't create a big complex platform. He had to do with what he had available and what was free, and so that's why he's come to this. And it's quite interesting to see that I think his students, in one of the iterations, there were 45,000 people who came to the phone class at one point or another. And I think that's fantastic exposure for his students. His students got the potential of 45,000 people suggesting, recommending, commenting on their work. And some of those students have gone on to get very good placements. So, I think that's a benefit we sometimes forget, that these students have had a very, I think, a rich learning experience, but they've also had the benefit of exposure within their fields and their discipline, and get recognition for that. There's an interview I recorded with Jonathan there. And when I looked back over some of the technology that these more open styles of MOOC courses were using, this is the word cloud, and you can see it's lots of nice free open source stuff. The free stuff is obviously has the concerns of sending your students to sign up to Twitter accounts. But there was a recent study published in The Guardian, which I think is a bit dubious. I say, pretext. 75% of students in Europe said they used Twitter all the time, which I think is a bit dubious. But if students are in these spaces already, then there's an opportunity, I think, to maximize on them. So I'm running out of time, so I just want to. The thing I'm trying to convey here is that it's not a binary thing. I think it's not open or closed, but I think if you start moving more to openness, then there are huge benefits for that. And this is a quote from Jim Broom, who's done a lot of work in this area from the digital storytelling in DS 106. And so, I think once you start getting yourself in this mindset of being more open about what you do, then there are potential benefits, pitfalls as well, but benefits. And the consequence of that was, last night I published a post with the links to my slides, some thoughts which you can go and read about what I was wanting to convey today. And then Jim Groom comes and comments on it. So I think that's nice. And, openness is about feeling warm inside as well. I feel warm inside. But it's not just Jim, it's other people commenting on Twitter, so it's making all those connections. I'm just going to finish with one point, and we get things like MOOCs coming along, and I think the last time I presented for this group was for Google Wave, which turned out well. But I think as technologists, what we need to do is just ride the waves. We see technologies come along. If our VCs or principals are becoming interested in these areas, we should just ride them. We should move forward a bit. But we just got to, MOOCs will probably fall out of fashion, I think, pretty quickly, now that Sebastian Froom's given them the thumbs down. The MOOCs within the Coursera line, they'll disappear, but I think the next thing will come along and ride that wave a bit further. Hopefully, as we keep riding these waves, it's towards a more open, more connected, more relevant style of education. And the small plug is that's actually the theme for our conference next year, which Joe is kindly co-chairing with others, so I'll finish that.